as far back as high school, I started having symptoms of depression. But it wasn't until my second year of college that depression really got the best of me. I was a pre-med student, honor student, had wonderful grades, was doing really well, but I just ended up getting so depressed that that I couldn't get out of bed one day to take my final exams. So I ended up failing that semester. And you can imagine that's pretty heartbreaking to someone who it's, her future depended all upon grades. And so after that, I really discovered the power of running, especially, but exercise in general, to treat my mood. I had done some exercising before in high school to help, but I didn't realize just how important that was. Whenever I was diagnosed with the depression, my second year of college, I was put on an antidepressant, and it helped for a while, but then it didn't. I started to feel like a zombie and was pretty much okay with being on the couch all the time, but you can't function like that. So with the help of my doctor, eventually weaned off and ran. And I ran pretty much every day just to survive. And even if the high only lasted a few hours, it was enough to keep me going that day until I could get up the next day and do it all over again. And so I ran for 10 years. And eventually, this was in 2004, I was training for a half marathon, and I ended up getting a stress fracture because I ran so much. But I didn't stop running because the pain in my foot was nothing compared to the emotional pain that I would feel if I stopped running. So I kept going until I couldn't anymore. And I always, in years past, would tell people, they would commend me on my discipline for running and exercising. And I'd just laugh and say, well, if I didn't run, I'd go crazy. And I knew there was some truth in that. I'd be depressed, but I didn't really know just how true it was. Until about a week or two after stopping running, I had my first manic psychotic episode, full-blown with hallucinations and delusions. I was thinking in my head that what was going on had to do with me getting married to the guy I was dating at the time, as well as me getting into medical school. My dad and I were going to New Orleans to pick up a car for me. I had finally been working for a while at a real job. I was in biomedical research after I graduated, and I'd always wanted a convertible, and so found one, a used one I could afford, and was in New Orleans, so we drove there. On the way there, because I'm so excited, all these great things are happening in my life. I was applying to med school, had a great recommendation letter. I was doing well in grad school, and was just so excited. I'm going to get this car. We were driving to New Orleans, and all of a sudden, I start hearing my boyfriend at the time through my dad's speakers in his Jeep giving us directions. And I start seeing all these billboards on the highway for Mardi Gras, because it was Mardi Gras, but in my mind it was a celebration that was going to be a surprise engagement party for myself and my boyfriend at the time. And my dad said I started seeing these cars passing alongside of us, and I thought they were friends of mine. For example, my friend Keely had an Xterra, and I saw an Xterra, and I was like, oh, Keely's coming to the party. This is awesome. My dad didn't know what was going on. He'd never seen anything like this before, and myself or anyone. And he was a volunteer cop, so he's seen a lot. So we get to the place where we have to sign the papers, and I was going to drive my car home. He was going to drive his Jeep back, but he knew that it wasn't safe for me to be driving. So signed the papers, left the car there, went back home. I lived by myself in my apartment. But my dad spent the night with me because he was worried. He spent the night on the hard tile floor in front of the doorway to leave the apartment because he was scared that I might get out. And like I said, he didn't know what was going on. So he tells me the next day, I guess, when we wake up the next day, that we've got to go to the ER. And I excitedly go to my room, my closet, grab my purse. Always says, grab your things. I grab my purse, my red silk boa, red boa and black silk robe. Doesn't everybody pack those things when they go to the ER? Again, I'm very excited. I'm not depressed at all. Why did I do that? Because I thought this was all part of me getting accepted into medical school, and still you might be thinking, what does this have to do with that? But I envisioned that there was going to be, yet again, a party for me, and one of my friends, I was going to be lying on this gurney, this hospital gurney, wrapped up in a white sheet, and one of my friends was going to rush me into the cafeteria. There would be all of these mentors, these doctors who had mentored me over the years, dressed in their white coats. I'd bust out of the sheet, start dancing in my black silk robe and my red boa, jump down, and one of them would hand me a white coat and say, congratulations for being accepted into medical school. It was all really fun until it wasn't. We'll back up. Before that, so that was what I thought what was going on. So Dad drives me to the ER, and when we get to the waiting room, I start doing yoga poses. I've been doing yoga since 2003, I guess. I started doing yoga poses in the waiting room, sitting in meditation pose, because everyone there is stressed out, right? If you're in the ER in the waiting room, so I'm trying to calm everybody down, you know. I saw this baby crying. I went and asked the parents if I could pick it up, and started holding the baby, dancing around with it, calm the baby down. Anyway, I was eventually admitted, taken back, and next thing I know, I find myself inpatient in a psychiatric hospital. Again, I'm still thinking, I'm confused, like I don't know what's going on, but I'm still thinking that I'm going to med school and I'm getting married. Next thing I remember was finding myself in this dark room, laying on this plastic mattress. There were no sheets. Laying down on my back, looking up and having these strange faces staring down at me. And next thing I know, I was given a shot, like I had done something wrong. And also of note, during this episode, which is what it's called, a psychotic episode, I called myself Dr. Love. I was going to become a doctor, and I'm a big proponent that love solves everything. And so even when I was in the ER and signing my consent to get a CT scan or MRI, whichever one they did in my brain, to see if there was something infectious going on, I signed my name Dr. Love. So I'm thinking, why am I being punished? You know, getting a shot. Later I found out that it was an antipsychotic that they gave me. I remember being asked to remove the strings of my yoga pants and the strings of my running shoes because they put me on suicide watch, everyone who came in there. I wasn't suicidal, I was excited. Sure, in times of depression for those 10 years, I hated myself, I didn't want to live, I never thought I was good enough, but I never attempted suicide, I never thought about doing that. So when I was there, doctors tossed around the idea of the differential diagnoses of schizoaffective and bipolar type 1. Upon my discharge, I was diagnosed with bipolar type 1. I couldn't be more relieved whenever I found out that diagnosis. Some people would feel like it's a death sentence, not me. I was so excited. When I was there, I asked the nurses to give me information from textbooks. I got the PDR, which is the physician's desk reference, read all about the pharmacology, mechanism of action of all the drugs that they had me on, what it was for. It made so much sense. All these years, I knew I was different than other people. I knew my brain was different, but I didn't know why, and I sure as heck didn't know that there was a name for it. There were enough people out there who had a brain similar to mine that they put a name on it. How cool was that? So yeah, it just all made so much sense to me. And then so I spent 2 weeks there, and then I was discharged to an outpatient facility, and there I had therapy for the first time. It was amazing. I never had therapy before, and I felt so loved by all the staff there. social workers, psychologists, doctors, the residents or the patients who were there too. Everyone was so encouraging and just built up my confidence. And I honestly left there feeling pretty much like a rock star. Like I had this special gift. I didn't see it as some illness because I just understood myself better. When I was discharged, I went back to work only to find that I had been removed from my position. Didn't get fired. It just put me from biomedical research into the library shelving books. So I was pretty humbled, depressed, whatever word is relevant there. Because of that, here I was in grad school for biochemistry, and I was asked to shelve books, put them in alphabetical order. So I learned that my dad had called my boss to let my boss know why I had been out. And he didn't know that there was a stigma. He just knew his daughter had gone to the hospital and he needed to tell the boss what was going on because that's the right thing to do. But they thought that I was going to be unreliable. I found out that my boss thought I'd be taking off work a lot, going to the ER, going to psychiatric hospitals. One thing I'd like to note here is I would love to tell that man today that I've never been admitted to a psychiatric hospital ever again, and I've never been to an ER for anything actually since then, knock on wood. It'll be 10 years this October. It's my first, since my last psychotic episode. The reason why I have not had a psychotic episode in 10 years is because of medication. My husband, we've been together for 11 years, and I haven't had a psychotic episode in 10 years.